when you're all ready.
Yeah.
I already pulled the dust cover off, but there is a dust cover that shipped with the console. Power button in the upper right. It does a quick little color chase across all the buttons to show you that all the LEDs in all the buttons work correctly. It's pretty quick, but if anything wasn't operating normally, it would probably catch your eye, you know, one of them not lighting or one of them sticking a certain color or something like that. It will automatically boot to the last show that was open. That is a configurable setting, but it does boot to the last show that was open, so it's not usually a good idea for a whole bunch of people to just use the same show file over and over and over and over again. That usually creates some problems down the road. The name of the show file that's open is listed right there at the top of the screen. It'll put a little asterisk there if there are unsaved changes. So when the console was shut down last, somebody didn't hit save first, but you know, it does like a slightly volatile save when it shuts down, and if you're not careful, you could wipe those changes out. You get one screen that's configurable however you want, and then one screen that is semi-configurable. There are a few static things like the browser that's docked down here that needs to remain, but the top portion up here can be any tab that you want. Then on the control surface, you've got 20 faders over here. They can be configured in pages, but they have a LCD scribble strip so that you can see what someone has programmed there. For example, this is S1 for Submaster 1. It's labeled power, so I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that that is going to turn on all of our relays and boot up all of those fixtures. Then we have a playback section here. This is for whatever the loaded queue stack is. Most of the time people only run one queue stack, but if you had more than one open in a show, you would have to load which one you wanted to be rolling through into that stack. So there is a crossfade fader if you like doing things manually. There is a stop/back button and a play button to go forward into the next queue. A couple of general controls, like release is a pretty common command that most console programmers would be familiar with, to release anything that they had manually manipulated. There's also an off button, a shortcut for go to queue 0, which is a hard-coded blackout at the beginning of every queue stack. And then one button for fader page so that you can quickly change the what page of faders is loaded over here. There's one scroll wheel here that is configurable in software to do a couple of different things. 4 encoders across the top that don't do anything specific. They're there to manipulate attributes on multi-attribute fixtures. So here in this system you have both moving lights and LEDs, so depending upon what you have selected, this may be like pan, tilt, focus, zoom, but if you select just an LED fixture, this may be red, blue, green, and you know, saturation or something like that. But there's a little bit of dead space here on this screen that when you select something that is controllable with those encoders, the 4 encoder slots will populate down there. Like I'm just gonna select channel 1 right away, and this is a touch screen. And what is patched in channel 1? Where is my... There we go. So I was just in the wrong mode there, but here you can see that it says red, green, blue, and the 4th encoder with that one LED selected doesn't do anything. But if I come up here and I start to dial the red back or forward, you see the color coordinate on the screen change. Then there's a couple of just general display control keys here. The displays button, which will always pop that browser up. You can tap it twice and minimize it, if you will, to just that bottom row to get you a little bit more screen real estate up top. But tapping displays again will always bring that back into the foreground. There's a dedicated address/patching button. I don't anticipate that you'll be in there a ton. The console has been patched once for you already, so unless you're building a new show file from scratch or something like that, probably won't need to be in there regularly. But double tapping that will put the whole console into patching mode. So now on that screen, there is all of the channels, all of the addresses, all of the fixtures, and what's attached where. And then this is in blind, and if we start typing something to patch, all of your patching options pop up. Then over here we have a couple of display related keys. The live key that I just used to get away from patching back to what the console is doing live right now. There's a blind key. If you are skilled enough to program in blind, I am not, but it is essentially imagining what something will look like, setting those levels, and then hitting go on the fly. It is terrifying to me. Some people are really good at it. I am not. But that exists. There's the navigation keys, the arrow keys, escape and select up there, along with a small grouping of backlit buttons that control the way information is presented to you. For example, right now this is set to manual channels, and if I go in here and hit format, instead of it being linear, now they're all in, this is what ETC calls tombstones. But I can toggle back and forth between that, and I can also,
I like tombstones for instruction. It makes it clear to the kid what is actually happening.
do I not have this tab selected? So the Flexi button will take whatever is displayed here, and right now it's only showing you patched channels. If I hit it again, it'll show you manual channels, which if we do a sneak there, now nothing's selected, so the screen's blank. But if I select channel 12, channel 12 pops up on the screen, and it just keeps it to stuff you've manipulated recently. Show channels, which is anything that's attached to a queue anywhere in your queue stack. That's a great way to keep this to a little bit simpler information while you're running a show. And then there's active channels, which is anything you have selected or has a level greater than 0. In-use channels, which is very much the same thing. Selected channels, which is only what you have selected. And then your normal show me everything view. Other than that, we've got a number pad, along with some modifiers for that number pad on both sides. So the console speaks direct English. How you would say something to a console programmer is very much the same way you can type it into the console's command line there. I'm going to clear that out real quick. But if I wanted to do I want to select channels 1 through 10, but not channel 6, I can type 1, there's a through key at the top of the keypad, type 10, and then there's a minus key, -6. When I hit enter, it's going to select 1 through 10 instead of 6. And once I have them selected, I can take this intensity wheel here and wheel them up, wheel them down. I can use the at key and tell them to go to, at 50%. There's a whole host of ways you can manipulate those, but pretty much all of those controls are right here in the bottom row buttons. And some of the other little shortcuts here. There's a next and last button that you can use to tab through your selection. If you have a range selected, if you just have one selected, next and last just keep going through all of the patch channels. There's a quick key here to select active, just to grab anything that has a level. So if you wanted to do a real kind of like stealthy but still manual blackout, you can hit select active and then just slowly wheel them all down without having to this through this plus this and grab them all manually. There's also a select manual and a select last if you had cleared out your previous selection and wanted to do that again. There's a select last key. And then for the rest of the quick basics, for starting a show, you can either use submasters that you've programmed already or manual channel selection. I'm just gonna create a bunch of, like 1 through 12 at full, for example, which doesn't look like much of anything, but we'll roll with it. There's a record button up here in the corner, and then I can hit record, cue, and as soon as I hit cue, I have a couple of options. I can type a integer in and specify what cue number I want it to be, or I can just hit enter and it will record it as the next available cue. And it will just auto number them sequentially. So I didn't specify anything, so it records.
If I was up to Q11 and I just hit enter, then it would automatically be Q11.
Yes.
But if I hit Q15, then it would skip 11 till 13 and record 15.
Yes, and you can also do decimal cues. So once your cue stack is done and somebody decides that, oh, we're gonna add this line in the show, so now there needs to be a lighting change in between
Like
14 and 15,
yeah.
you could do 14.2 or something like that and squeeze another cue in there.
Next won't go up, like if I have a 14.2, it'll still go to 15 if I go to next though, right? Like,
Yes,
okay.
yes. So the cue list stays organized in numerical order, and next will always just be the next highest.
And if I recorded like Q11, because I'm putting in like 10 cues, I know I'm gonna add some in later, and I skip 7, 8, and 9. If I start at 6 and I'm at 6 and I hit next, it'll go to 7 because it's empty.
Yep.
Will it go to 7 if 7's not empty?
Well, if it will skip any cues that don't exist. If there's physically a cue there, it won't skip it. So like here I've recorded Q1, I'm gonna do like 20 through 40 at full, and let's just do like a record Q5. Now I have a, especially if I bring up, I'll do it on this page over here. I don't remember what its tab number is. Nope, that's the wrong one. Live playback, where are you? Fairless display, channels and use being held. Am I just blind? Where is lamp controls? Why do I not see the
I'm gonna dim the stage lights to see it better.
why do I not see the so let's go to Q0. Live. Go to Q0. Enter. All that stuff fades out. And 1 through. Yeah, so now we have the Q1 that we recorded earlier, Q5, and if I go back here to Q0 and hit go, there it is, loading Q1. And if I hit go again, it loads Q5.
Right, but then if I went back and programmed in Q2, if I say redid Q1 and then I hit next, it would go to Q2, not Q6, right?
Right,
Okay.
yes. So as long as you go back to say Q1 in that case, next will then go
Right,
to
but if I went to
Q2
5, then
rather
it's-
than 5.
Right.
Um,
It goes up no matter what to the next available
Yes.
empty spot.
Yes, it doesn't by default have any scripting for what order they go in beyond their queue number. In the like advanced class that you could either do with us or through YouTube or something like that, there are queue links and follows and stuff so that you can program the console to jump through a sequence of queues in very particular timing, or to jump from this queue to that queue. If you had something that you had programmed all the way through that needed to come up twice in the show, it would be a lot faster for you to program a link in there to go back to this other section of queues rather than record them all over again manually or try and copy them one at a time or anything ridiculous like that. So there are ways to tell the console intentionally to jump around in the queue stack, but if you don't program any of that, it just goes next, next, next to the next highest number from wherever it sits. So that is the simple way to record queues. Just set the look, hit record queue, and then specify the number if you want to, or just hit enter. And then if you use the go to button, there it is, the go to queue button, and let's say I want to update Q1 or change Q1, I can use go to Q1 and hit enter, take it there, and let's say I wanted to just add channel 50 to that. There is an update button here, and I can do update Q1, enter, and it updates that queue to now include channel 50. And then, other than that,
When you said add, which button did you hit? Record?
well, I hit update, which is
Before that,
right
right?
here
Oh, okay.
near record. But after I made the changes I wanted, update, then queue, then the queue number you want to update.
So you just made the changes though. You just once you brought up the queue, then you just manipulated the changes.
Yeah. So before that, I used the go to queue button, went to the queue I wanted to update, so I didn't have to recreate the queue itself, and then made the change to the queue, and then hit update queue, and went that way. There are lots of different ways to do the same thing in this console. There will be the way I tell you to do it. There may be something different in a YouTube video, and then something different still in the paper manual. None of them are wrong. Like, they're all just a programmer's workflow
Preference, yeah.
and preference. And then I don't spend all day every day programming on these consoles, and the software moves a little bit faster than I do. So there are some new features in here where they added a new shortcut that might be really helpful to you that I don't even know exists. It can be a lot of work to stay on the cutting edge of what the consoles can do. But for the sake of simplicity and the way a lot of the schools use the consoles, sticking to the basic direct entry methods like record Q1, update Q1, things like that, those will always work, and so they're pretty easy to keep.
Fairly universal on
yeah.
all light boards.
Yeah, most light boards these days use direct entry. There are a few outliers, but those are mostly popular in Europe and don't find their way over here very often. So keeping it kind of basic at first is the easiest way to avoid some of those, oh, this shortcut broke, oh whatever. The same goes, the same recording pattern goes for submasters, groups, and presets as well. All of those keys are over here. I can go to Q 0, not 00, just go to Q 0, enter. Whenever you're recording something other than a cue, you want all of your playback to be out, because it's going to capture everything that you do, not just your selection. But if I wanted to take, 1 through 20, and make those a submaster, submasters are proportional, so if you wanted something to be, when the submaster is at full, that light's at 40, that light's at 70, that light's at full, now would be the time you would set that up. I'm just setting them all to full, so that when the submaster is at full, all those channels are at full. And I can hit the record, sub, and if, again, just like with the cue, if I don't specify a number, it's just gonna pick one for me. It put in sub 1, which already exists, and it gave me a warning. Please confirm. And we don't want to overwrite sub 1, sub 1 is useful. But I see that sub 5 is open, and then I just get that little diamond at the end saying it sent the command and everything is great.
You hit enter at the end, right?
Yep. Enter is the terminating command for all of these things. If you don't see a little diamond at the end of the command line interface, it hasn't sent the command anything, it's open to keep typing. It holds the last command in there so that you can see what was done. But as soon as you start typing anything else, it just wipes out that previous command, and lets you keep going. Then, to get any of those subs that you recorded onto a fader, we recorded that one as sub 5, so sub 5, and push both of these buttons at the same time, and it loads sub 5 onto that fader.
Are these faders layered, or are they just, you assign them as you need them?
They have pages, so they are layered. That term, depending on what console you're on, could mean a couple of different things. And
you can program multiple things per fader?
You cannot program multiple things per fader, but because they are in pages, you could have like page 1, which is all 20 on one page. You could have that to be like all of your utility stuff, house lights, work lights, stuff like that. And then page 2 could be the submasters for all of your stage blocking, just your general rep plot zones and stuff like that.
Like we were doing a thespian or a VHSL festival or something, we just needed the sort of standard pools of light in the different parts of the stage.
Like that sort of thing. Depending upon your programming style, 20 faders is either way more than you will ever need, or it is nowhere near enough. Like, there doesn't seem to be 20 is perfect middle ground with most programmers. I don't remember right off the top of my head what the page limit is. I think it's 10, but they might have upped it from 10 since I checked in last.
Sorry, so when you say the page, it applies to all the faders?
Yes, it is all 20. So you don't have to have them all programmed or anything like this. Like, I could have this be page 1, even though there's only 5 of the 20 programmed.
And then on page 2, I could have like 12, and then page 3, I could have like 4.
It doesn't matter, but when you change that page, it changes all 20 faders to that next layer. So
if you can't find everything, and you might be like, oh, well, maybe you changed the page, go back to the page 1, and now you've got your faders back.
Which is exactly what this fader page button is for. I honestly need to review exactly what the syntax is for this fader page button, because it doesn't put anything in the so it doesn't put anything in the command line, but you hold the fader page button and then touch 2, for example, for fader page 2.
It shows up above it.
and it changes the fader page. I am pretty sure that the limit is 10 pages. But there is a Submasters control tab, which is tab number 15, that lays out all of the programmed subs, what level they're at, what mode they're in. By default, they will be additive, proportional, and highest takes precedence. And that they stack on top of whatever the console's already doing. Proportional, in that if you have a light that's at 50 and a light that's at 100% in the sub, when the sub is at 100%, light A will be at 50, light B will be at 100. But if the sub is at 50%, light A will be at 25%, light B will be at 50%. It just holds that gap between them. And then HTP, whatever is in the preset or in the submaster, the highest level takes precedence regardless of where it's coming from. So if you have manually set a channel here to a higher level than it is in the sub will never be able to control that light fixture. It will stay at, if I take channel 40, for example, and set it to full, and it's only 70% in a given submaster, the submaster will never be able to control channel 40 until I release whatever is holding it at full so that the submaster can take control again. But you can set submasters to LTP for latest takes precedence. So as soon as you touch that sub, it wipes out whatever else any of those channels were doing and sets them to sub control. You can change the master from proportional to absolute so that when you bring the fader up to 100%, it captures all those channels at 100% and then fades them all evenly back to 0. And there are a couple of other modes other than additive that I don't remember exactly what they are off the top of my head, so I don't want to confuse you. But I know there are some modes like inhibit and exclusive and stuff like that when they're configured, as soon as you touch that sub, it kind of takes over the whole console or prevents control from elsewhere, which can sometimes be pretty helpful, like with your relay circuits for power to all of those fixtures. You could have those on a inhibiting sub or something like that so that the rest of the console can't manipulate them. But there's always some pros and cons to those different programming methods, which is one of the reasons why they're available on the LCD to toggle them on there so that you don't have to worry about them in the console.
Does one override the other?
The relays themselves are highest takes precedence, so they're just going to see a control level coming in either from the architectural system or the console.
Whichever one's higher.
Whichever one's higher wins. So as long as they're on there, this won't be able to force them off.
Right.
So there are a couple ways to get around that are not configured in this system, but there is priority. It's a network system, so you can add priority to those things and force overrides on certain channels, but that is intentionally not configured because that is very difficult to document how you've done that and really explain what you've done. So we have intentionally left the system and everything's at the same priority.
We're getting closer, so you just turn it off there and then use it here, right?
Yeah, it is really up to you how you want to use it rather than me
Right.
telling you that this is the way you have to do it.
Yeah.
So, is there anything else specific about the console that you need to know how it works?
Is there a certain amount of submasters available, like a limited amount, like 12 or 10?
It's limited by the number of pages
Pages,
for
okay.
mechanical controls. I think the soft limit for subs is like 1,024
Oh, wow.
or something
Okay.
like that. But if you can't park it on a fader, controlling that sub in a useful capacity is difficult. Not impossible. You can, manually grab type in a sub and attach its intensity to this scroll wheel, and but then you need to know the sub number off the top of your head and things like that, which is kind of.
Well, I mean, we have 5 pages of 20 sliders, so that's 100.
Yeah, I think the limit's 10. It might be more than 10 now. I haven't taken a deep dive into version 3 of the software that released in like November, and is not on this console yet to the best of my knowledge. We're gonna check real quick.
Does this,
Yeah, you're still running 2.9.
does this have to like be connected to Wi-Fi or something to update, or?
No, there is a USB port on the front, and you can go to ETC's website and download the update file. It's just right there on the downloads page under the Ion. You bring it over here on a thumb drive, plug it in, and go into the settings menu, update console, and it just kind of runs automatically. Generally, I encourage people to not update the console. These get tested a lot before they go out into production. And so if the console does everything that you want it to do, you probably won't gain anything by updating other than confusing anybody that doesn't know that you updated it and having to relearn something that potentially you knew exactly how it worked before, and in the update it changed, and now instead of just running a show, you need to sit there with the change notes for an hour figuring out like why doesn't the color picker work the way it used to, that sort of thing.
So, what I have 3 or 4 electrics, do you know?
I believe you have 3 plus your psych electric, which is technically electric 4,
Okay.
but it's so far upstage.
Right.
It's fairly useless for
Just for
much
psych
other than
lights,
the psych.
right. And then the side booms.
Yes, you've got the booms on the side, and there is plenty of power for anything you could possibly want to rig. There are DMX output nodes on every electric, on the pipes, on the, like, you will likely find the weight limit of an electric before you find, or physical space, before you find the limit of how much DMX or electricity is available anywhere in that system.
And the numbers.
Can we go over that, how to control an individual circuit so that if he was to use black lights, foggers,
Yes.
those kind of things, you could turn
Yeah,
those on.
right.
So,
Or those like effect lights, like.
Sorry, if you had another question, I didn't mean
No,
to
no,
interrupt.
that was one of the things and the other thing I was just gonna say,
I was
number
gonna give
one.
us a chance to put like a break in the video and make that a part 2 if you wanted
Yeah,
to.
let's